We turn to the wrath of Mother Nature during this cruel season as parts of this country are heading into another night of some record flooding. A huge, slow-moving storm dumped record amounts of rain on southern New England for the second time this month. And in Rhode Island, some folks who've lived there all their lives say they have simply never seen anything like this. Julie Martin of the Weather Channel's in Cranston and our own Mike Taibbi's in Warwick tonight, just across the bay. Mike, we'll start with you. Good evening.
Good evening, Brian. How are you? You know, this is not a boat ramp and a big lake behind me. It's actually a big office park, or it was until those record rains flooded it as never before. One example of why, while the storm may have passed, the state of emergency continues. In many parts of Rhode Island, parking lots have turned into lakes, with scores of cars and even RVs totally swamped.
Route 95 South is closed.
And so many roads and even stretches of highway have been flooded, including along I-95, that it takes forever to go almost nowhere.
I have been on the road for 2 hours, and I'm nowhere near what I'm supposed to be.
But traffic tie-ups, even airport delays, are hardly the most serious impact.
I've lived near the banks of the Patuxent River my whole life, and never anything like this.
Warwick Mayor Scott Avesian told us the damage is worse than any model imagined by the town's engineers.
It was built for 100 years.
Even the sewage treatment plant is totally immobilized and faces weeks of repairs.
You do all the modeling and you look at all the plans, and none of them took into account the amount of water that we were going to be dealing with.
There were stories of ruin or near ruin throughout the flood zone. Joe Maroney of Winchester, Massachusetts, took us back to his riverside house, which was hit just 2 weeks ago, knowing his basement was a goner and maybe his family home of 34 years, too.
I had a cleaning company come in. They took 5 fans and a dehumidifier out of here Monday, and I got flooded again Tuesday.
For countless thousands, the main task was to simply get through the day, to carry the dog to his morning walk, to be helped over the only passable road so you could get to work, to walk home from the airport, as Bob Girardi did, if that was the only way.
I've been walking 4 miles. I got about another 4 miles to go. 5 miles. Wow. Yes, sir. But I'll be home.
The numbers are the numbers. So many thousands evacuated or without electricity. But this is a story about nature's profound power. Individual lives changed, and not for the better.
We work so hard to keep the water out, and you just can't do anything about it.
And here's one stat that'll give you an idea of the scale of this record-breaking rainstorm. In nearby Cranston today, the Patuxent River crested at 20.7 feet. That's only 13 feet above flood stage. Some amazing numbers, Brian.
Mike Taibbi in Warwick, Rhode Island. Mike, thanks for that. You mentioned Cranston. That's where Julie Martin is from the Weather Channel with some reporting on just how cruel a month March has been. Julie?
Brian, parts of Cranston are still underwater tonight. The rivers are starting to recede, but the real issue moving forward will be recovery from these unprecedented floods. The real culprit here, heavy March rains that were just relentless and repeated all the way from New Jersey up through New England. Look at some of these totals. 8 inches plus in Atlantic City, over 10 in New York, 16 plus in Providence, Rhode Island. All numbers for the record books. There is some good news on the horizon, however, Brian. We have dry skies in the forecast and a big warm-up in store for the Northeast. In fact, by Thursday, we're looking at 60s in New York City, 50s in Boston, even 50s in Maine. Those warm temperatures are expected to stick around for the Easter holiday weekend as well. So after a very rough week here, the people of the Northeast will be getting a much-needed break. Brian?
Julie Martin rounding out our coverage in Cranston, Rhode Island tonight.